Hello, you are on the Epic Life Stories channel. Today we will listen to a new exciting story. Subscribe to the channel. Enjoy watching. Policeman John Smith stood guard, as he did every night, in a small suburban area of the city. He was a relatively young officer, about 30, with little experience, but he was eager to do his job honestly and correctly. The night was calm, but every time a car passed by, John tensed, ready for any surprise. Around midnight, he noticed a car that seemed suspicious to him. Tinted windows, slow traffic, all this made him wary. Without hesitation, he turned on the flashing lights and drove the car to the side of the road. The driver did not seem to notice the signal right away, but after a couple of seconds he stopped. John took the flashlight and headed towards the car. His heart was beating faster than usual. He stopped at the driver's window, carefully examining the interior. At the wheel sat a dark-skinned man of about 40, dressed in simple but neat clothes. He looked tired but calm. John asked the man to roll down the window, which he did with obvious displeasure on his face. "Good evening, sir. Do you know why I stopped you?" John asked, trying to be polite but firm. The man looked at him with a serious expression on his face. "Good evening. I have no idea why you stopped me, officer," he answered evenly, trying not to show his irritation. "Can I see your documents, please?" John was persistent, realizing that he must not lose control of the situation. The man sighed and slowly reached out to the glove compartment. John tensed, his hand trembled slightly, but the man only took out his identification card and driver's license. The policeman took the documents and stepped back to check them with a flashlight. When his gaze fell on the ID, he froze. The card read, "Captain Michael Brown, Police Department." John felt the blood drain from his face. He looked up and met the captain's gaze. Michael Brown looked at him with a barely noticeable expression of weariness and slight annoyance. "Sir, John began, trying to find the right words, but suddenly realized that his voice trembled treacherously. "Officer," Brown interrupted him in a calm but firm tone. "Why did you stop me?" John was not prepared for this turn of events. He understood that now his every step, every word would have consequences. What could he say? Should I say that his suspicious appearance and the late hour forced him to act? He knew that this did not sound convincing enough, and he was afraid that his actions might be misinterpreted. "Sir, I'm sorry, this is probably a misunderstanding," John began, but was again interrupted by the captain. "Misunderstanding, officer?" Brown said, and there was steel in his voice. "Or something more serious?" John felt cold sweat gathering on his forehead. He knew that every word he said now carried weight. Brown was not just some random driver, but a high-profile police captain. John realized that he could have seriously damaged his career and reputation. "Sir, I apologize for this misunderstanding," John continued, trying to remain calm. "You didn't fit the typical profile I usually stop, and maybe that was a mistake." Michael Brown sighed and closed his eyes for a moment, realizing that the officer was sincerely worried. He began to soften a little. "Officer Smith," Brown said, "I understand that you are just doing your job, but let's not forget that mistakes can cost much more than just a bad stop." "Yes, sir, you are right, I understand," John replied, feeling his anxiety subside a little. Brown nodded and seemed to be thinking about something. He then took out his phone and dialed a number. After a few minutes, he ended the call and looked at John. "My boss wants to talk to you. Perhaps this will help you understand the situation better." John nodded with relief. This was a chance to figure out what happened and how to move forward. A few minutes later, the sound of approaching footsteps was heard in the air. John saw another policeman approach them, also in civilian clothes, who introduced himself as Detective Chief Larson. "Good evening," Larson began, turning to John. "Captain Brown informed me of the situation. Let me figure this out." Larson approached Brown and, having accepted all the explanations from him, moved the conversation to a more private plane. John, standing aside, had difficulty hiding his feelings. He did not know how this evening would end, and what decision his leadership would make. It was not easy to find yourself in such a situation with high management. After some time, Larson returned to John. "Officer Smith," he said, "the situation has been resolved. Captain Brown and I have discussed your behavior. Your mistake, although unintentional, was truly serious. However, given your apology and your sincere desire to make amends, no disciplinary action will be taken against you." John sighed with relief. He knew he could have lost his job, but now it looks like he has a chance to make things right. "Thank you, Detective Larson," I honestly just wanted to do my job. I understand that I made a mistake and will do everything to avoid such situations in the future." Brown, who had previously been watching from afar, approached John and extended his hand. "Officer Smith," he said with a slight smile, "I appreciate your honesty. I hope this incident helps you become a better person. Our work is complex, and sometimes it is important to understand how our actions are perceived by others." John shook the captain's hand firmly and they exchanged understanding and respect. Both men realized that despite the mistake, they could learn from the situation. "Good luck, officer," Brown said as he walked away to his car. When John returned to his patrol car, he felt deeply relieved, but also somewhat embarrassed. He knew that today he was close to a serious mistake, and this reminder would stay with him for a long time. The headlights of Brown's retreating car disappeared over the horizon, and John returned to his work, but with a new sense of responsibility and attention to detail. He knew that now he needed to focus on becoming a better cop and avoid making similar mistakes in the future. Meanwhile, Brown got into his car and breathed a sigh of relief. He understood that the incident was unpleasant, but he was glad that there were no serious consequences. When he arrived at his house, a call from his boss was waiting for him. Brown answered and heard the voice of the chief, who was more than willing to discuss what had happened. "Captain Brown," the chief began, "I heard about today's incident. How are you feeling?" Brown thought for a moment, knowing that he now had to talk about his impressions and thoughts about what happened, which could affect his career and personal perception of the work. "Chief," he began, "I believe that today was an important lesson for all of us." Captain Michael Brown listened to his superior, trying to organize his thoughts. The conversation was about how important human relations are in police work, and how sometimes it seems that such incidents can be more than just mistakes. "Chief," Brown began, "I think it is important to understand not only what happened, but also how it affected each of us. I saw this not only as a mistake, but also as an opportunity for growth." The boss was silent on the other end of the line, so Brown continued, "I started out myself once, and I know what it's like to be in John Smith's shoes, so much inexperience and a desire to prove your worth. I remembered how I once made a mistake that could have cost me my career, but I was helped then. I decided that this time I would try to help in the same way." The conversation with the boss was long but constructive. Brown spoke about his experience, emphasizing the importance of understanding and learning, not just punishment. The boss agreed and promised to provide additional training to employees to prevent similar incidents in the future. When the conversation ended, Brown walked into the house and saw his wife, Christina, waiting for him. She noticed his tired but calm appearance and, hugging him, said, "How was your night?" Brown told Christina what had happened, and she listened carefully, supporting and comforting him. During the conversation, she noticed how important this situation was for Michael and how worried he was about the consequences. "Michael," she said, "I'm proud of the way you handled the situation. It's not just about your behavior, but also about how you think about others and try to do better." His eyes filled with tears and he hugged his wife tightly, feeling all the pent-up stress melt away. These moments of support and understanding were invaluable to him. The next day, John Smith returned to duty, still reeling from the incident. He felt he had to do more to justify the trust he was once again given. As the day progressed, he noticed that his colleagues began to approach him and express support. One of the senior officers, Jake Roberts, stopped him for a minute. "John, I heard about your incident. Don't worry, we all go through this. The main thing is to learn lessons and move forward. If you need to discuss something or need help, I'm always here." John was touched by this gesture. These words of support and understanding were like a breath of fresh air after a stressful night. He understood that there were real friends around him who were ready to help. In the evening, when John returned home, his family greeted him with smiles and hugs. His little son, Luke, ran up and said with joy in his voice, "Dad, you were a hero. You did something important today, right?" John leaned over to his son and hugged him tightly, feeling tears welling in his eyes. His heart was filled with pride and love. "Yes, Luke," he said, "I tried to do everything right, and this is important to me." When evening came, John went outside and looked at the stars. He felt inner peace and tranquility. He understood that every test, every challenge is an opportunity to grow and learn. These moments were not only lessons, but also an opportunity to find support and understanding in your loved ones and colleagues. Brown also ended his day reflecting on what had happened. His mind was filled with thoughts about how important it was to create a community where mistakes were understood and learned from, rather than simply punished. He realized that he could help not only his unit, but the entire community, making it better and safer. And so, when the night enveloped the city, both police officers, John and Michael, went on a well-deserved rest, each with their own thoughts and experiences, but with a new understanding of the value of human compassion and professional growth. The next day John Smith came to work with a new mood. His colleagues noticed that he became more confident and relaxed. He knew there was still a lot to be done to restore his reputation, but he felt he was on the right track. Today was the day he could demonstrate what he had learned from what had happened. At the morning meeting, officers discussed new training and activities aimed at improving patrol performance and preventing misunderstandings. John noticed that among those present was Detective Larson, who had helped deal with the situation yesterday. "Good morning," Larson began, looking at the crowd. "We decided to introduce additional training on interaction with civilians. It is important that we know how to communicate effectively and respectfully in any situation." John felt that this decision was the right one. He listened carefully as Larson described new methods and approaches and thought about how he could put them into practice. Meanwhile, Michael Brown also continued his work, but was focused on creating new programs to increase mutual understanding within the department. He knew that problems like this could happen again, and he wanted to do everything he could to help his colleagues avoid similar situations. "We must remember," Brown said at one of the meetings, "that each of us may be in a situation where our life and work depend on the correct interaction with others. I hope that our efforts will help us become better and more considerate of others." During the week, John actively participated in training and activities aimed at increasing professionalism and confidence in his interactions with civilians. He also began conducting additional training for young officers, sharing with them his experiences and lessons learned from the recent incident. One day, after another lesson, a young officer, Jessica, approached John and thanked him for his help. "Officer Smith," she said, "your classes really helped me understand the importance of paying attention to detail and treating each person with respect. I feel like I can handle situations on the street better now." John was touched by her words and felt that his efforts were beginning to bear fruit. He noticed that such gratitude and recognition became a real incentive for him. One day, when John and Michael met by chance on the street, they exchanged a short but sincere glance. "Officer Smith," Brown said, "I would like to thank you again for handling the situation so professionally. You have shown that you can learn from your mistakes and move forward." "Captain Brown," John replied, "I am also grateful for your understanding and support. It helped me become a better person." Brown nodded and said, "I hope that our experience will help make our city better and safer. We're all in this together." Gradually, John felt that the situation with Captain Brown became part of his growth and development. He continued to work on himself, teach others, and strive to better understand his role in society. A new initiative soon emerged in the department, which included regular meetings and discussions aimed at sharing experiences and improving communication between employees. Michael Brown and John Smith became active participants in the program, helping to create an atmosphere of trust and openness. Together they worked to create a community where everyone could openly talk about their experiences and mistakes, learn from them and move forward. As a result, the department has become more united, and its employees have become more attentive and sensitive to each other. Several months passed, and John found himself back on the street, on patrol. It was an ordinary evening, but now he felt more confident and calm. He knew he was doing a better job and that he was part of a team where mistakes were seen as opportunities for growth rather than just criticism. That evening, as he drove by, he noticed how people on the street began to treat him with more warmth and trust. He felt that his efforts had not been in vain. And Michael Brown, watching John at work, knew that this story did not end just as an accidental misunderstanding. It was the start of something bigger, a movement toward greater understanding and respect. And although their paths may not have crossed often, they both knew that thanks to this event they became better and wiser. In the months following the incident, John Smith and Michael Brown, despite their different jobs, remained in contact and exchanged ideas about how interactions between police officers and the community could be improved. They both noticed that positive changes began to appear in their work and in their relationships with citizens. One day, Michael Brown invited John to participate in an open public forum on security and interaction with the police. He suggested creating a discussion platform where city residents could directly voice their concerns and propose solutions. "That's a great idea," John said, considering the proposal. "Such interaction can help us better understand the needs and concerns of citizens." John and Michael spoke together at the forum, sharing their experiences and answering questions from residents. The forum became an unexpected success. People spoke up, asked questions and offered ideas to improve safety and interactions with police. Discussions were frank and constructive, and John observed that the community had become more open to cooperating with the police. After the forum, when the discussions concluded, John approached Michael. "Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this, Michael. I feel like we're really doing something important to connect with the community. And I'm grateful too, John. It's not just about being a police officer. It's about understanding that we are part of society and that our behavior affects it," Brown responded. Both officers continued to work to improve police-community relations. Their department began introducing new initiatives, such as regular meetings with residents, open houses where police gave tours to citizens, and programs to educate youth about their rights and responsibilities. One day, John, returning from work, saw a small celebration in a local park, organized for children and their families. It was an event where the police, together with other organizations, held games, workshops and performances. John decided to stop and participate. As he approached the stage, he saw children playing happily and their parents interacting with police officers, asking questions and expressing gratitude for their efforts to improve their lives. John felt great satisfaction that interactions between the police and the community were now more positive and productive. During the event, John noticed a familiar face. The same young officer Jessica with whom he discussed trainings approached him. "Officer Smith," she said with a smile, "this event is simply amazing. I can see that everything we have learned is really bringing results." "Glad to hear it, Jessica," John answered, smiling. "It is important that each of us understands that the work of a police officer is not only about maintaining order, but also about building relationships based on trust and respect." Later that evening, when John returned home, he was pleasantly surprised that his family had prepared a little surprise. They hosted a dinner to honor his recent successes and contributions to the department. "We are proud of you, Dad," said Luca, hugging him. "You are doing something important for our city." John felt that all the effort and worry was worth it. He understood that the work he did matters not only to himself, but also to those around him. These moments of support and recognition were important to him and inspired him to new achievements. As time passed, John and Michael continued to work to create and sustain positive change in their department and community. They knew that reform and improvement was a process that took time and effort, but they were confident that every step forward made a difference. Ultimately, their work together became an example of the importance of not only fulfilling your responsibilities, but also building real connections with people. They both continued to grow as professionals and as individuals, realizing that the true power of police work lies in the opportunity to make the world a better place by working together and supporting each other. Michael Brown and John Smith continued to move forward, their efforts bringing real results. A new era of openness and mutual understanding has begun in the city. Police officers and citizens began working together to create a safe and cohesive community. One day, several months after the successful forum and other events, the department held an awards ceremony to recognize employees who had made significant contributions to improving public relations. John and Michael were among those honored. At the ceremony, the department head gave a speech in which he noted the importance of the work done by both John and Michael. "Today we celebrate those who not only did their job, but also turned it into a means to create a better society," the chief said. John Smith and Michael Brown showed that even after mistakes, you can change direction and become an inspiration to others. When it was their turn to receive their awards, Michael and John exchanged smiles and handshakes. This award was not only recognition of their work, but also a symbol of the change they helped create. After the ceremony, John and Michael, no longer in a formal setting, met in a cafe to celebrate their successes and discuss future plans. "You know, Michael," John said, "I never thought that my life would change this way. This incident, although difficult, helped me understand how important our work is and how we can do it better." "I think so too, John," Brown replied. "We both grew from this experience. And you know, this is not the end. We've just begun. It is important to continue to work to create a safe and respectful community." They continued to discuss their plans, as well as ideas on how they could expand community outreach programs and training for new officers. They knew they still had a lot of work to do, but they felt that their combined efforts could make a difference. Several years passed, and the changes they initiated began to bear fruit. The police department has become more open and transparent, and the level of trust and cooperation with the public has increased significantly. People began to turn to police officers for help and advice, and not just in cases of emergency. John and Michael continued to work in their roles, but their approach to work changed. They knew that every day is an opportunity to do something better, help others, and continue the path they once began in difficult times. One day, when John and Michael met on the street to discuss one of the new initiatives, they stopped to look at the city that had become a better place because of their efforts. "We did it, Michael," John said, looking out at the city streets filled with life and activity. "We really did something important." Brown nodded and smiled. "Yes, John, we did it together, and this is just the beginning. It is important to remember that each of us can contribute to improving the world around us." And so, two police officers who began their journey with difficulties and misunderstandings were able to create something more meaningful. Their story is a testament to the power and opportunity that comes when people work together, support each other, and strive to be better. Their work continued, and each new day brought new challenges and opportunities. But with their experience, understanding, and collaboration, John and Michael were confident that they could overcome any challenge and make the world a better place for everyone. This is the end of this wonderful story. I hope you liked it, and you were imbued with this atmosphere. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as it promotes my video. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye everyone.